Hey everybody, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Today I thought I'd just show you around the garden a little bit, show you some things that are happening and some stuff that's perfectly normal popping up this time of year in January, even though it might not be intuitive that it would be. So let's go take a look. Let me show you. Now this bed right here is where we had the black and blue salvia. I'll post a link to that video in the description. You can check that out. But over here, what you're going to notice is the daffodils are starting to come up. Down in the south, they tend to call them buttercups, but they are daffodils, and they will start coming up. They could bloom anytime between now and March. It just depends on the weather and where they're planted and their growing conditions. But it's certainly not unusual to see them popping up this time of year. Not too far away from those daffodils, I've got tons of these little seedlings. These are from money plant or Linaria. Sometimes it's called honesty too. And I've got a ton of this plant coming over here because I pulled a bunch of it out and dumped it in this spot, and it has grown. So you can see all those little seedlings coming up. I'll probably need to pick them and transplant them and move them around to different parts of the garden. Now, in among this camellia plant, there is a winter blooming jasmine that has just started blooming. That could bloom anytime between January and February, depending upon the weather. See these yellow flowers? This plant actually was planted on the opposite side over there. Kind of, you can see right here, there's another plant of it. And it crawled along the bottom here and then self-rooted down here and then ended up growing over here. But it's not too unusual to see it in the wintertime bloom. In fact, that's when it's supposed to. So if you're looking for a winter blooming shrub slash vine, winter jasmine would be a good choice. And here's a little update on some of these cuttings I've got going on here. These are the Autolucan cherry laurels. Did a while back. See, they've got some pretty good roots popping out the bottom. They're doing really well. I've got a couple of pots, actually 3 pots of these little guys. So over here is a camellia that's doing pretty good that I rooted. And then there's some other trees right here. I believe those are the pawpaws and some of the rosemary, all doing pretty well. So this is just a little update here. And all these boxwoods, I never got around to potting them up. I need to. I'm way behind on that. These here have not done as well, and I'm curious if there's even any roots on them at all. Wow, that's a root right there. That is from a black dragon. Black dragon is a cryptomeria, and we don't have a lot of space inside of our house. So one year we decided to grow one in a pot and keep it as a Christmas tree. And it's over here. It's had some rough times, but you can see it's still growing and alive, and this is the one I took the cuttings from. I took the cuttings in the spring, and I just kind of treated them like I would the boxwood trees, boxwood shrubs. And but as you can see, I finally got some rooting on it. It took a very long time for them to get to this point. I checked on them multiple times, and there were no roots. But anyway, sometimes if you just wait long enough, you can get rooting to happen. So that was a nice surprise. I didn't expect that to happen when I started to come out here to show you around the garden. But you never know. Sometimes things just take some time. And if you leave them in the ground, you leave them in your rooting thing, your medium, your pots, just leave them for a little while if it doesn't work out, and eventually you might get something. As long as they aren't dead yet, there's hope. Now, I've not been very active in the vegetable garden, but at least in this bed, we've got some cilantro going, a little bit of mustard, and it's that time of year where everything kind of seems to have taken a hit from the cold. Not a whole lot growing without any kind of a cover over top of it. You see over here I've got a messy pile of boxes. Those I'm going to use to do some no-dig garden beds here before too long. I'm going to break those down, remove any kind of plastic tape that's on them, and then they'll form the base layer to help smother any weeds. And on top of that, I'll put like compost or something else on top, potting soil, dirt, combination of things. What you see in front of you right here is a tarp that I'm tarping off an area. This is where I had tomatoes last year. So I'm not sure what I'm going to put there yet, but I do know I want whatever's there now to get killed off and be ready to be planted when the springtime gets here. I preserved a lot of my strawberries so that they could just grow on their own as they wanted to underneath the tomatoes that were planted over here. And as you can see, there's quite a few of the strawberry plants. So I'd like to get those moved over to another bed before too long. And then of course you can see some more mustard that comes up here. It's not that we like mustard that much. I love it, but we don't eat it that much. And these just self-sowed, but it's good because it actually is not consumed by the deer or the rabbits, and I think it probably will discourage them from coming over here to these beds in the future. So over here I've got a couple other things. This is a little Japanese maple grown from seed. This is a transplant that naturally sowed. Over here is one I grew myself inside of a milk jug, kind of a winter sowing technique. You can see it right there. It's doing pretty well. I need to transplant that this spring too. Some of my boxwoods from cuttings that are doing okay. Nice small little plants. And these may not look that great, but it's echinacea and they are doing just fine. You could actually pull them out of the pots and you can see some nice healthy root systems. This is just the top growth that got killed off by frost. No big deal on that. We've got some blueberries over here. These are all, cheap finds from clearance sales at the end of the season. So I've got quite a few of those going on. So I'm hopping in the greenhouse here just to show you. I've got a couple flats planted here. I did lettuce, kale, and a type of an onion, and we're going to see how they grow. But so far, nothing's popping up. We've been really cold ever since I put these out here, so I don't expect them to germinate probably for a few more days at least. I would guess probably sometime next week we'll have something from it. But those are done in the 1020 flats that I highlighted in the greenhouse video not too long ago. It's real easy to do it that way. You just take one of these that has holes in it, like this over here, and nest it into one that doesn't have holes in it, and you can retain the water in there until you've got good germination and are ready to move the flats around. Then you can just put them wherever you want to, or transplant them into the garden as needed. So I hope you enjoyed that little walk around. There's not much happening here, but soon we're going to be starting seeds. We'll be starting our tomatoes and peppers. We'll do the peppers probably toward the end of January, so we don't have too much time for the peppers to be growing indoors before we can put them back outside. Tomatoes don't need as much time as peppers, I found. If you do the peppers first, probably about 2 to 3 weeks before the tomatoes, that usually works out about right. You can do your eggplants about the same time as the peppers if you want to do that. I never start things like cucumbers or squash, anything in the cucurbit family. I find it actually does better if you direct sow the seeds in the garden. It's just easier that way, and less of a headache of transplanting and moving over. So just some random tips there for you. That's what's coming up, and look forward to having you along. If you want to hit the like button and subscribe, really appreciate that. We'll catch you later.